geographical conditions that as a country and as a region that we can continue now bringing up and growing up nutritious foods. With that, I support the committee and I urge that we all adhere to the standards that have been set both regionally and internationally. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. The member from Mombasa, Honorable Zamzam Chimba.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika, na mimi niweze kupongeza Mheshimiwa ambaye ameleta mjadala huu bungeni, na niweze kusema kuwa Mheshimiwa Spika, ushirikiano wa mataifa ya Afrika Mashariki katika usalama wa chakula na lishe bora ni jambo ambalo limeleta mwamko mzuri sana katika Afrika, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika, nimekumbuka Mama Samia Suluhu akiweza kumwambia rais wetu kuwa sisi kama Waafrika tunaweza bila kutegemea mataifa ya nje, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na Mheshimiwa Spika alikuwa sawa kabisa, kwa sababu anajua wakati mwingine sisi kama Waafrika tunadaiwa kwa sababu tuna njaa, tunadaiwa kwa sababu watoto wetu hawana lishe bora na mambo mengine ambayo ya kuweza kutudhuru yanaingia katika taifa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi napenda kusema hivi: tukiweza kuwapa wakulima wetu mbegu, tukawapa teknolojia nzuri ya kuweza kukuza mazao yao shambani, kuwapa mbolea, kuwapa nafasi nzuri ya wao kuweza kunyunyizia mazao yetu ndani ya shamba, Mheshimiwa Spika, na baada ya mavuno pia wakiweka kwenye magala yao, iwe tunawapa namna kuweza kuhifadhi chakula katika magala. Ikifika msimu wa njaa, Mheshimiwa Spika, iwe tena hakutokuwa na njaa, wanatoa vyakula katika magala, yanalisha taifa, Mheshimiwa Spika. Hii ni juhudi nzuri ambayo imefanywa sana na viongozi wa Afrika Mashariki, Mheshimiwa Spika, kwa sababu kuna msimu ambao pengine Kenya ina kiangazi, Tanzania wana msimu wa kuvuna, Mheshimiwa Spika. Kwa hiyo tukiweza kuamiliana vizuri na mataifa ya Afrika ya Mashariki, wao wakivuna kama sisi hatuna, chakula kinatoka kule kinasaidia watu wetu wa Kenya. Na sisi kama wao wakati wao ni wa kiangazi, na sisi pia chakula kinatoka Kenya kinaenda kuwasaidia wale. Itakuwa tunasaidiana sisi watoto wetu kupata lishe bora, wananchi kupata chakula, na itakuwa hatutoi ule mwanya wa mtu kuja kutuambia kuwa leo mna njaa, kwa hiyo mimi nitawapa chakula na nyinyi mnipe hichi, ama nitatoa deni na nyinyi ili muweze kupata chakula. Haiwezi kutokea, Mheshimiwa Spika. Mheshimiwa Spika, tukiwa na taifa ambayo ina chakula na udongo uko sawa, Mheshimiwa Spika, mambo mengine yote yataenda sawa, kwa sababu wakati mwingi ule umaskini ndio unachangia Mwafrika anaonekana kama si chochote mbele ya dunia. Lakini ikiwa sisi viongozi wetu wataweza kushirikiana, leo nione viongozi wa Afrika Mashariki wamekaa pamoja, wanapanga mikakati ya mataifa ya Afrika Mashariki. Mimi kama mama kaunti wa Mombasa nasikia vizuri sana, na ndio leo nampongeza Rais Samia Suluhu kwa juhudi ambazo wanafanya kuhakikisha kuwa wanakaa na marais wetu kuweza kuhakikisha kuwa hali inakuwa nzuri. Najua hii mkutano ilifanyika katika taifa la Rwanda, Mheshimiwa Spika, na juzi nimetembelea Rwanda, niliangalia vile maisha yalivyo kule, nikasema kweli Afrika inaamka, Mheshimiwa Spika. Na hii katika lishe bora na usalama wa chakula, leo mimi najua wakiweza kuwafikia jambo hili, watoto wa Kiafrika hawawezi kutokea kwenye mapicha na kwa shakoo mara marasmas. Watoto wetu wametumika katika dunia nzima, Mheshimiwa Spika, kuonyesha ukosefu wa chakula, kuonyesha umaskini, kuonyesha ukosefu wa afya bora, kwa sababu tu sisi hatukuwa na namna ya kuweza kulisha jamii zetu kama Afrika tuweze kuwasaidia. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi naunga mjadala huu wa leo, nasema tena, lishe bora na usalama wa chakula unaanza na sisi wenyewe katika Afrika Mashariki, na kisha tutaboresha mataifa yetu. Asante sana Mheshimiwa Spika.
Thank you. Honorable Jerry Maina of Kirinyaga.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to support this timely motion. Honorable Speaker, hungry nation is an angry nation. The government must never vacate its duty to ensure that it has fed its population. I want to laud the Kenyan government for ensuring that they have invested in agriculture, Honorable Speaker. We put in and passed in the main budget 5 billion Kenya shillings for the subsidized fertilizer program, Honorable Speaker. Further, we have budgeted for construction of dams, Galana, Diba, and many others, Honorable Speaker, so that we can ensure we have protected our people and safeguarded and protected them so that we can have food security. Honorable Speaker, in the same breath, we cannot be speaking about food security and thinking of selling or privatization of Mwea Rice Mill, Honorable Speaker. Mwea Rice Mill is owned, 45% of it, by the farmers of Kirinyaga County in Mwea, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, it is very unfortunate, and the courts need to decide and give a clear picture and way forward on what public participation entails. Honorable Speaker, I want to make myself clear and say that they can sell anything else but not Mwea Rice Mill, Honorable Speaker, because members of parliament must be here on the floor to defend and represent the interest of the people who elected them, Honorable Speaker. And I cannot let them down in this day and time. And I want to promise the people of Mwea that I will continue pushing and aggravating for the issues on this floor, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, they have been requested to attend a public participation in Nyeri, Honorable Speaker. How do you ask the people of Mwea to go and record their grievances in Nyeri, Honorable Speaker, in regard to Mwea Rice Mills, Honorable Speaker? Why don't we make public participation easier for the Kenyan people and accessible to ensure that it is done at the point of instance, Honorable Speaker, so that our people can tell the government, Honorable Speaker, that they do not want the Mwea Rice Mill sold or given to any private entity, Honorable Speaker. It is the sweat of their grandfathers. It is the sweat of their grandparents, Honorable Speaker. They have a right to have a say, and I have a duty to ensure that I have communicated that on the floor so that we can ensure that our people are part and parcel of the decision-making of the government, Honorable Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. The Honorable Danga of Matayos.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Let me also add my voice on the motion on food security and nutrition as moved here by my good friend, Honorable Haji. I want to really state that food security must be prioritized for any nation. Dependence on food from other parts of the world outside our own region and our country should be something that we really should detest. Because the moment we continue relying on imports of food, then we lose our own nationality, we lose our own pride, we remain beggars, and those who give us food will always keep us in ransom. We don't retain the independence that we have as a country. So really, giving effect to the Maputo Declaration, which suggests and proposes that countries should come up with, and within their budgets, they should at least give 10% of their budgets to matters agriculture and food production, is very critical, and each one of us has to support this particular motion because of giving credit and also supporting the Maputo Declaration so that we have enough food. In this country, for instance, we still have stunted children when we move around. Stunted children meaning they are not getting the right diets, they are malnutrited, you know, they don't have enough quantities and qualities of food as required. This is something that we should really not be having in a country like Kenya. And therefore, our government needs to prioritize issues of food security, look at nutrition. Even in schools, our children, I think, need to be given food so that they look healthy, they are not stunted, we don't have kwashiorkor and all those diseases that go with malnutrition. Mr. Speaker, sir, I also would like to suggest that our governments ensure that seeds are supplied to the farmers, fertilizer is supplied and subsidized and reach all parts of the country. We should have fertilizers and we should have seeds for planting. Now it's raining heavily and the planting season is coming ahead. Government must plan for this and ensure that we have enough seeds, we have subsidized fertilizers for our farmers to make sure that we have enough food. Recently, I attended a meeting in Kampala. That meeting was about the African grain trade. And it was noted that we don't have enough grains in East Africa, in Kenya also. And we are even importing these grains from even war-torn countries. The war in Ukraine and Russia, you can imagine that those countries still are exporting grains to us. When we have fertile soils, we have enough rainfall, Mheshimiwa Haji, what are we doing? And we have a strong workforce which is idle in our youth. How do we put them to use? These are issues that we really need to address to ensure that we have food security and good, good nutrition for our children. Mr. Speaker, I support.
Wakili Muriu.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion on food security. Mr. Speaker, matters of food, that's why they're called basic. It is the foundation of Maslow, whereby it's food, shelter, and clothing, which becomes the bedrock of human dignity. And therefore, the conversation about food supersedes any other conversation, Mr. Speaker, especially where this country has become food insufficient. And therefore, Madam Mr. Speaker, if this country cannot be able to come up with a green plan to ensure that we can eradicate malnutrition among our children, where people go hungry, or where we give food donation, then it means, Mr. Speaker, our policies are missing, and we need to readdress and recalibrate our policies, especially on food security. Mr. Speaker, you saw the other day when there was a bit of drought, our communities, even places like Central Kenya, you can hear cries of people where they're saying they want to be supported with food, and they want to congratulate the government because it came through at that very, very key moment. But again, that's giving people fish is not sufficient. What we need to do, Mr. Speaker, sir, is to come up with clear policies on, before we talk even about industrialization, putting up roads, we make sure that every sector, every area of this country is producing enough food for our people. Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the government in their policy in terms of cheap fertilizer, which they are going for 2,500. I also commend the government for the policy on making sure that all the colonial dams are being rehabilitated, so at least again we can be able to make sure that our people are able to grow their food, in particular because of the climate change. The rainfall is no longer dependable. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, that's why I'm supporting this motion. On the issue about the food, Mr. Speaker, we can talk about food production, but without addressing the question on whether our primary school and junior secondary school students are being fed, Mr. Speaker, we are missing the point. My quick reading on Article 57, 1A, it says clearly, every child of this country has a right to quality education. When I look at Section B of the same article of the Constitution, it says every child is entitled to quality nutrition. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, sir, the issue about food does not only talk about food for adults. We need to see how the motion which passed before this parliament, whereby we pass a motion that every child in junior secondary school, every child in primary school, as we provide them with learning materials, as we provide them with books, as we provide them with desks and good classes, matters of nutrition are constitutional. And therefore, as we plan to grow food for our people, as we plan to have a green plan to make sure that there's enough food, feeding our children at that level is very critical, because that's the only way, Mr. Speaker. Number one, we can breathe life to Article 57 and breathe life to Article 27 of the Constitution, but at the same time, make sure that a hungry child cannot learn, but a child which is well fed, our investment in education will bear fruit because they are well fed, we have good nutrition, they are healthy, and therefore we can be able to get the fruition of our investment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support.
Honorable Mulanya, Member of Parliament, Nambale. My friend, what's out of order? Honorable Member.
Honorable Speaker, I rise on Standing Order 95, noting the mood of the House in support of this report. May the mover be allowed now to called upon to reply.
But I wish you had come after me giving before giving Mulanya a chance, because I have the discretion not to go your direction. And now that I had given a honorable member, Mr. Mulanya, I would ask Mulanya to proceed.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this chance to give a contribution on this motion, despite the attempts by my good friend, Honorable Abraham, to gag my views on the same. Mr. Speaker, food security is very important for our nation. And we have had this debate in our country for a very long time. We note that we are just come from a very serious drought in this country, where we had serious hunger in the nation. Right now, we are blessed with heavy rains. And also we had a bumper harvest. But the problem is that after 1 year, again, our people will be suffering. The question that we ask ourselves as a nation, are we prepared for future? And then I will say no, because if we had a bumper harvest, then 1 year down the line, again next year, we start having our people complaining about lack of food, then we'll say that as a nation we'll be failing. I therefore propose that the government should take serious measures. First of all, to have enough storage facilities. In cases where we had a good bumper harvest like this year, we should store food that can keep our nation for a period of more than 3 years. Secondly, we also need to look at the issue of the land tenure system. We talk of food security, but we know very well that we farm in the land that is available. But as we continue to subdivide this land, we will not have in future a place where we'll be able to now grow our crops. So as a nation, we need to come up with a policy to ensure that we control the subdivision of land, especially the arable land, where we are supposed to be farming, so that we have security for future production. Then we are looking at funding of agricultural research institutes, so that farmers can have improved seed varieties to suit the changing climatic conditions. we know that after sometimes when you walk around the nation, like I was in Ambale constituency, in some areas, they were telling me that the maize they planted, they are currently not doing well. So we need to have the researchers moving around to ensure that this particular seed variety, why is it that instead of the crop maturing, it's rotting in the farm because of the heavy rains? So we need to ensure that our research institutes are well funded so that they can give us proper seeds that can withstand the change in climatic conditions. Third, I also wish to encourage the government to ensure that the issue of storage of water, currently we're experiencing heavy rains in the country. We are seeing floods all over, but we will be shocked that 2 years down the line, we'll be importing rice from Egypt. And yet, we have areas in our country that can produce rice. Like in Ambale constituency, we have the Malanga Mukemo irrigation scheme that was surveyed by the National Irrigation Authority, but to date, they have no funds to execute this particular project. If we can have rice as an alternative to maize, we'll have that the season when our farmers can farm maize, then the short rains, they can also resort to rice, which will improve on the supply of the food within our people. I therefore rise to support this motion and say, request the government to put in place proper mechanism to ensure that we protect our people from hunger. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well, honorable members. A member had risen for misplace on standing order number 95 that the mover be called upon to reply. But I did use also my discretion powers bestowed to me to allow Honorable Mulanya, who was already on his feet, to speak on this matter. So may I put the question, is it the mood in the House that the mover be asked to reply? Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Will those as of contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. The mover, you may proceed.
Okay, thank you so much, Speaker. I give 1 minute to Honorable Omani and 1 minute to the lady from Kisii.
Mover, I hope there was urgency and that's why you are being called upon to reply. So, but just give to 2 and then proceed to reply.
Okay, thank you so much. 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support this motion because our food security is paramount and nutrition as well. Our country once used to be the basket of East Africa, and as we continue joking around, I can see that we are going to be among the people who will be malnutritioned in Africa, and people might not be coming to Kenya to see the animals. They'll be coming to see the malnutritioned people in Africa. So food security is a priority. It's critical to our nation, and we have to do something urgently by protecting what we have first, not losing it, and also making sure that we do not engage in things that will bring in GMO. Like Kenya seed is already being sold, that will bring the foreigners to start controlling what seed Kenyans should be planting. So food security is a priority in Kenya, and it's a must that all Kenyans have to participate in making sure that we do not miss out in having enough to feed our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. When we are talking about food security,
I believe that's Honorable Donya.
Yeah, Donya, Kisii. Why it has come timely, like now, Mr. Speaker, when there are these heavy rains, our infrastructure has rendered the farmers' produce not to get to the market. As we support and Parliament raises its eyes open, we also factor that part of infrastructure so that we don't have farmers' produce rotting at home. Another thing, Mr. Speaker, as I finalize, there are so many children who go to school because the food the feeding programs that happen at school. If we take good care and guard our food security, we will have more children going to school, because there are those who go to school because they've been attracted with the fact that they are given food at school. So I support the honorable member for bringing up this, and we hope what we've deliberated will be of good essence to our people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Mover.
Honorable Speaker, sir, if it is okay with you, the chairman of the Agricultural Committee has asked for 1 minute, and I don't mind donating to him. Okay.
No, we don't grant you that one. Proceed to move.
Thank you very much.
Proceed to reply.
Thank you for the guidance. I beg to reply this report, and that what is very critical in this is that as legislatures, as members of parliament, we need to ensure that the various legal framework for food production and nutrition is given priority. And also, we need to make sure that conventions, international conventions that we have signed, such as the Malabo Declaration, is adhered to. What is very important in a country like ours, whose economic background, is agriculture, family farming is very important. We have very little commercial farms in this country. The family farming is what is contributing to our food security and nutrition in this country. And therefore, as parliamentarians, we have to give full support to our farmers, small-scale farmers, because they contribute to 80% of the food we have. Also, this being the era of climate change, we should come up with business unusual. Business cannot be the same, because we are no longer able to predict the timing of the rain, the intensity of the rains, and plant or grow our crops as per the way we used to do it. Now we have to rely heavily on forecasts from our meteorological department, which they did very well this year. They warned us early enough that there is El Nino, and therefore farmers had to stop a little bit to wait for a lot of the waters to pass through and pass it. The other thing is, in terms of education, unless our children get adequate and nutritious food, we shall not develop in our education sector. Because the brain development of a child depends on nutritious food. Of course, the most important nutritious food that we need to start with a child is the breastfeeding milk, the milk from the mother. The milk from the mother is the most important one, particularly in the first 1,000 days. If a child misses that milk from the mother, and then thereafter, the child is not supported with nutritious food, then whichever school you take that child, the child's performance might be affected. With these few remarks, I beg to move. Thank you.
Very well. We shall put the question at a later date or a later time. Next order. But before the next order, honorable members, when my business when I'm in the chair is actually to give you, honorable members, a chance to speak on these motions. So when you move from your place and actually indicate that the mover be called upon to reply, and you also proceed to go ahead and vote that happened, then we really must go that direction, instead of the chair now taking over to start distributing chances to members, honorable members, to speak. So next order.
Order number 13, motion, sessional paper number 2 of 2023 on the national tax policy.
Chair of Finance.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. So, Honorable Speaker, I rise to move that the House adopts a report on the Committee on Finance and National Planning on its consideration of the session of paper number 2 of 2023 on the national tax policy, laid on the table of the House on Thursday, the 23rd of November 2023, and approves session paper number 2 of 2023 on the national tax policy as recommended with amendments in the report. Honorable Speaker, before setting out the specific provisions of the policy, it behoves us to understand that the motivation behind this policy. Since independence, our country has had several tax legislations that have guided the tax measures the country undertakes. However, there has never been a single policy that acts as a guide for the country to ensure fairness and equity in the tax system. This has seen the tax system in the country being unpredictable, making it difficult to create certainty in tax rates and tax bases. Honorable Speaker, the policy is part of the national government's efforts to enhance transparency in tax practices and forms the basis for tax reforms and review of existing tax legislation in future. Honorable Speaker, the key challenges identified in the tax system by the national tax policy include: 1, a growing tax expenditure; 2, complexities in taxation of emerging economies such as, because of emerging economies and technologies such as the online business, cryptocurrencies, and digital assets. 3, low tax compliance. 4, challenges in international taxation. And 5, lack of guidelines for treaty negotiation. And lastly, delay in settlement of tax disputes. Honorable Speaker, why do we need a national tax policy? The rationale of the national tax policy is to grow the tax revenue. The tax reforms within the confines of the national tax policy will enhance domestic resource mobilization required to finance the government's development agenda and reduce the country's fiscal deficit. Honorable Speaker, I say you cannot claim to be independent or sovereign if you cannot finance your budget. As long as you're relying on other people's resources, then your independence and your sovereignty as a country is under threat. And 2, to provide legal framework for introducing tax incentives. This policy is critical, therefore, in guiding the management and monitoring of the action of the tax incentives to safeguard the tax base and ensure value for money. And 3, to provide guidance, ensure certainty, and establish coherence in light of any future amendments to national tax law. Frequent changes in tax laws cause unpredictability and inefficiency in tax administration, and this creates distortions which impose additional costs to taxpayers and revenue administration. This also will enhance structures for information gathering and sharing, and so this policy provides guidelines for enhancing information gathering and sharing to support revenue mobilization and protect the tax base. In terms of efficiency in how we manage our tax refunds, the tax refunds process is lengthy and constrained by inadequate information. The unpaid refunds will hold the working capital of the taxpayers and therefore imposing liquidity constraints on businesses. And this policy seeks now to provide guidelines for ensuring timely processing of tax refunds. The Finance Act of 2023, you may recall, allows now businesses to be able to claim their input VAT across other tax brackets. So this, Honorable Speaker, is an even a better provide an even better enabling environment for businesses to thrive, not just by in terms of tax refunds, not just by claiming their input tax, but also ensuring that the refunds are accurately budgeted for and paid timely to these businesses and therefore safeguard their working capital. And last, Honorable Speaker, address complexities in our tax legislation and administration. There has been complexities relating to tax administration legislation. For example, the computation of tax liabilities, filing of tax returns, and the interpretation of various tax laws. These complexities affect the ease of doing business in the country, and this policy therefore provides guidelines of how to address these complexities in tax legislation and administration. Honorable Speaker, in accordance to Article 118 of the Constitution, the committee undertook public participation, and as a result, we received views from 22 stakeholders who gave their submissions, majorly who lauded the policy, noting that stability and predictability of taxes are key to supporting the growth of business and investments in the country. Honorable Speaker, to address the unpredictability of tax rates, the policy recommends a comprehensive review of taxes every 5 years. The guidelines and principles of tax policy will be vital in enhancing transparency in tax policies, addressing the challenges that have plagued the Kenyan tax system for a very long time. And this policy, therefore, will ensure that there is no frequent tax changes in tax laws and strengthen economic operations of a country. If you may recall, Honorable Speaker, around the month of April, that's when we received the finance bill, which takes around up to the up to that year of June for approval. So in the month of April, May, and June, on any particular year, the business environment is uncertain because there is no clear, it's not absolutely clear what decisions Parliament would adopt in terms of the tax proposals that are made around that time. Then after it's passed in July, apart from this time, when you only have 2 amendments that are touching on taxes, then you'll find a miscellaneous bill coming around September or October, again changing either a few tax rates or interpretation of a tax law. And then immediately after that, then we again now go to the next cycle. And remember again, even after the Finance Act is assented by the President on around the 1st of July, there is usually, Finance Act is always litigated in court. So there's another 2 months again of not knowing what the courts will decide. So around all this time, it sets a very bad precedent to the business, sends the wrong message, and therefore, many businesses are not able to have proper tax planning to know these are the areas to invest, this is how to make sure we are compliant. And again, even after now those decisions are made, then it also takes some time before the Kenya Revenue Authority updates their system towards now the new tax law. So this policy now is seeking to address that so that we have a predictable tax environment, that if you set up a business in Kenya, you are certain that your tax obligations for the next 1 year or for the next 2 years are not likely to fundamentally change, so that we ensure that we become marketable as a country as an investment destination of choice, and also in terms of ease of doing business. Honorable Speaker, the overall objective of this policy is to guide the progressive development and administration of Kenya's tax system. The specific objectives include: 1, to offer policy guidance on the collection, enforcement, and administration of taxes; 2, to provide the basis of review and development of tax laws; and 3, provide guidelines to stakeholders, including investors, on tax policy matters; 4, provide guiding principles for the Kenyan tax system; and 5, to provide a legal framework for granting tax incentives and concessions to various sectors of the economy. Honorable Speaker, what are some of the things that the committee recommended for amendment or revision? So the policy shall offer solutions to the ailing tax system by promoting equality in tax administration and providing policy guidelines that will guide the collection of taxes. For instance, Kenya has a huge untaxed informal sector that the government can tap into by having innovative ways of increasing our tax base. The policy will also act as a guide to any future tax laws to protect taxpayers, support economic development, and enhance the country's competitive edge, promote economic diversification, guarantee value for money and business, and establish tax incentives and exemption scheme that is aligned with Kenya's development agenda. Honorable Speaker, it is paramount to have a policy that protects the taxpayers, so that we ensure that the rights and the freedom of the taxpayers is safeguarded. And this policy, Honorable Speaker, is meant to do that. The National Tax Policy of 2023 shall create predictability in tax laws, banalizing the challenges present in the current tax regime and setting objectives and guidelines to address them. The policy will be aligned with the medium-term revenue strategy with an aim of economic recovery and government's agenda on bottom-up economic transformation agenda better. Honorable Speaker, the policy guidelines aim to solve the present challenges affecting revenue collection by expanding the tax base, having the international best tax practices in tax administration, and developing a framework for granting incentives. The committee, Honorable Speaker, proposes the expansion of the scope of the hard-to-tax sectors to include the digital sector, which is a large sector that has remained untaxed. The 3 sectors are digital economy, informal, and agriculture. The policy shall provide more innovative ways to expand the tax base, and there is a need to provide alternative ways to tax the informal sector, for instance, possible use of withholding taxes, which require business to withhold taxes as a source, at source when making payments to what these sectors we are calling as, that the funds are made within a short period and taxpayers can plan ahead. And what is interesting, Honorable Speaker, until we did this amendment on the Finance Act, if you owed KRA money, if KRA owed you money, for example, on input VAT, and you still were meant to pay other taxes like PAE and corporate tax, and you applied for a refund, and they don't pay you, they don't refund to you, but the amount of money they're supposed to pay them would accrue interest and penalties. And yet, they actually owe you money. That's why now that amendment was critical to ensure that now you can net off your liabilities on other taxes. But you may find yourself where you for example, have stopped doing business. So you KRA owes you money, input VAT, but you're not likely to, maybe you stop that business or move to something else, and therefore you're not likely to be in a situation where you'll be able to offset that tax against any other tax. So this now provides a guideline that there must be, Treasury must allocate funds for approved tax refunds so that those tax refunds are actually made within 6 months after their approval. The committee has proposed to amend the policy to ensure that tax expenditures estimates are explicitly provided in the annual budget estimates presented before the National Assembly during the budgeting cycle to improve budget transparency, and that the policy obligates the National Treasury to publicize reports on these annual tax expenditures. Honorable Speaker, further, the policy will set out a progressive tax band structure that ensures that the marginal rate is not higher than the corporate income tax rate. Currently, the marginal rate of 35% is 5% higher than the corporate income tax of 30%. This means that only are individuals taxed at a rate higher than corporations, but also a higher tax base, considering that individuals are taxed on their gross earnings, while corporations can claim deductions for the expenses incurred in the production of their income. Individuals are not allowed to claim deductions. This what essentially means, if you check how corporation tax is calculated, you take the profit of an entity, then you less what you call allowable deductions, and then you apply the 30% corporation tax on that net income. But if you check the way PAYE is deducted, individuals are not allowed to deduct. Individuals are not allowed to have deductions on their PAYE, on their income. So to give an example, when a company makes a profit of 100,000 shillings, they're allowed to make deductions of the expenses incurred to gain that income, what we call them allowable expenses. And then we take 30% of now that net and calculate that as their corporation tax. But if you go to an individual who earns a salary of 100,000 shillings, the only deductible allowance is contribution to NSSF to a particular percentage. Then all the rest of that is applied to one basic rate. So it actually means that salaried people therefore end up paying higher taxes than corporations. So this national policy now seeks now to amend that so that we have now individuals paying the same as corporate, so that there's no that preferential treatment. And this will also help reduce tax planning, where now some individuals might find it easier to operate as a company rather than as an employee of that company. So instead of you and if you're operating, Speaker and I are operating a business, instead of us earning a salary from that business, then it saves you more money by incorporating that business as a company and earning dividend as directors of that company rather than being employees of the company. That's what I mean. And part of the views we received from the public were, for example, to allow for deductions if you have children, because actually it means that if you are, say, a member of a family, and so you are the breadwinner in that family, that means the burden on you providing for that family is higher than probably someone who doesn't have a family. Those are some of the interesting views that we're actually receiving, saying that allow me to deduct my monthly expenses like food before now you calculate a pay. And consequently, so this amendment now is seeking now to have, this now tax policy is now seeking to have at least a fair structure, whether you are body corporate or an individual paying under, whether it's under the corporation tax or under the income payee or income tax or the Income Tax Act. Honorable Speaker, this policy also proposed an amendment to the policy so that pensions that are now currently treated as so that we ensure that pensions are treated using exempt taxation method rather than the current system where although your contributions are exempt, the payment eventually is not. So now we want to make sure that we have an exempt, so that we ensure that pensions are not taxed at all. And this will, in addition now, provide for an inflation adjustment on pensions every 5 years to keep the pace with inflation, the high cost of living, and increase, and we're saying also the increasing tax burden on salaried people or payroll-related services that individuals, especially in the formal sector, this is what now this also aims to cure. Honorable Speaker, the policy will also ensure that the granting of income tax incentive or exemption is only targeted to manufacturing investments, and the same sustained for not less than 5 years to allow the growth of these sectors and certainty in the business environment. This is where also, Honorable Speaker, we've not been doing very well, where we come up with tax incentives, whether it is in investment deductions or these are the tax incentives we give to manufacturers, only for us to change them 1 or 2 years later. The cost of setting up, for example, a manufacturing plant is highly capital intensive. And not just now the capital, even the time. You find some manufacturing plants will take up to 5 years to just set up. So